Shore time means finishing on Friday is as good as finishing on Tuesday.
What short time means to me is when the task is done, I'm done, and I'm done.
Shore time means I can build you a house out of 550 cord and duct tape. You wouldn't want to live there, but I can build it. So the truth of the matter is, neither Curtis nor I were happy with how we got that other engine running. It sounded a little rough. What we're going to do is table it, rebuild it, and make it something much better at a later date. In the meantime, I want some power out of that mini bike, so we are going to put on a Ghost 212 Predator.
I was looking at the routing of the tubing for the fuel pump, and while I was doing that, I was looking at the mounting for the fuel tank. You had told me yesterday that you're pretty sure the fuel tank mounted up the same way. It was the same fuel tank as what's on there now. But if that's the case, there's two that go here and one that goes here as far as bolts to secure the gas tank. Well, first off, we got to take this plate off then to do this bolt for the gas tank. But these two I'm concerned about because we have hoses that have to go here. This is our pulse, and this is our out to the carb, and this is our in from the fuel tank. And I'm worried that these two may be in the way of the mounting.
The first part of that process, at least for me, is to take off the heat shield to give Curtis room to work. Now, you might be wondering why it is our first step is to figure out where to put the gas tank. After all, aren't other things more important? Not for us. The way we see it, until you know how the gas is going to flow into the carburetor, nothing else really matters. That's why our first step is to measure and cut a gas tank bracket. Interference, clearance, these are always issues when you build something. A mini bike is no exception. Can you imagine what issues might arise when you built a metal bracket to go over top of fuel hosing? With this metal bracket, the edges could be a little sharp and rough and it's butting against a fuel line directly. That could be bad news with lots of vibrations, especially from a 12 horsepower engine. We're going to sheath it a little bit to protect it. And now we don't have to worry about metal chafing. Most of what we did with the Predator today was just bolting on parts to it, so I didn't really film all of that. Just to let you know, that's what we did. We are about to try and test run her on the bench, clamped down, to see if we can put her in the mini bike. A brand new engine means empty fuel lines, an empty carburetor, and thus a challenge to get her started. That means the only way to do that is to pull and pull. And pull. And pull. So 2.5 hours, let it run table every 20 minutes or so, and then let it idle for the rest of the time.
So do we want to put that, do we want to swap, we have to swap this heat shield from head to head.
Yep, and exhaust.
We got to swap the exhaust, and we have to install the drivetrain bracket.
Right.
Do we want to do that before we set it up to break in, so that once it's done break in, it can go in? Or do you want to let it break in and then let it cool and then do that stuff?
Call it. What do you want to do?
I don't care. I'm asking you. I literally have no different. It's cold now. Let's do that stuff now. Plus, that way during the break-in, we'll get to hear and see how it's going to run with this exhaust and that muffler.
Yep, that'll work. Good.
Okay, let's get to it.
1, 2, 3, break. Tabling an engine to run it means it has to be secured somehow, because the vibrations from a 12 horsepower engine means that engine's going to wander off the table if you don't. Have I mentioned I'm cheap before? Yeah. Anyhow, for me, that means I have to make a bracket. You simply take a piece of wood, put some holes and screws through there, and clamp her down. And while I'm doing that, Curtis is doing all those last-minute knickknacks to get the engine ready for her break-in period. That's right, break-in period. We're not going to sell an engine that's not broken in. At Shore Time, our biggest watchword is quality. I'm good. The break-in period for Predator Ghost is 3 hours. That's 3 hours of work that we're going to put in on Stevie. And the last thing to dial her completely in is a custom exhaust. You didn't really think we were going to sit around for 3 hours pulling our starter cords, did you? There are 2 portholes for the governor. After the 3-hour break-in period, it was finally time to put the Ghost into Jezebel. And as you might imagine, putting an engine on a mini bike doesn't just mean slapping together a few bolts and praying for the best. It takes some fine-tuning and adjustments. Remember all those clearance and interference issues we were talking about? That's why it's important to work out those issues before you install the engine. But even when you do your homework, even when you do prep work, there's no guarantee. You almost always have to tinker. So what we found out on the mini bike was the spacing and the lining up of the chains to the sprockets on the clutch and the rear wheel weren't quite aligned with the Predator. So we were winding up having to put spacers, which amounts really to a couple of washers, onto the shaft to make it work. Getting the chains to line up with the sprockets isn't exactly fun, but it's absolutely crucial
to get the bike to run right. We did. And when that was done, given how the exhaust stuck out of the back of the mini bike, we decided to heat wrap it, figure out how to avoid burning his shins. But again, at shore time, one of our biggest watchwords is quality.
And even though it sticks out, wrap's going to help a lot.
We are almost there, folks. Grumpy Mike has to adjust and tune the throttle assembly. We have to put the finishing touches on the back bracket to the gas tank, and then we're ready for a rip.
This is kind of the mechanic stuff that we set out to do. It was an engine swap, but there was quite a bit more involved in it. We had to fabricate a bracket to mount the gas tank, trim the fender back to get the carburetor and air cleaner to fit, front bracket to tie down the gas tank as well. It required quite a bit of tinkering to, a little bit of work above and beyond just a regular nut and bolt wrench turning type mechanic. So I'm proud of what we did here. It required basic mechanic skills, advanced mechanic skills, fabrication skills. Turned out with a bike, which is absolutely amazing, scary as hell.
We just took Jezebel for a rip, and I gotta say, she's actually scary fast. One might say that a Predator 212 is too much for a mini bike.
And while it's Jezebel's first rip with the new engine, it's also the end of her story on Shore Time. Like, subscribe, and get notified, please.